Hi, everybody. It's Lori and Lawrence, and John Walicki is back with us again. And we're back for another chit chat about the construct, the supernatural construct, and how that fits into flat Earth theory and flat Earth conspiracy and all the other conspiracies and factions and groups that are going on out there. And so we're going to start off right off the bat talking about all the different people that are coming into what we think is the hit topic of 2019, and that is simulation theory. And we are all opposed to that word simulation because we'll explain that as we go. But I'm using the word supernatural construct. You all out there in listening land can use whatever term you want. But for my purposes, and the guys can say whatever they think it is, but for my purposes, it is above natural, man's understanding of nature and explanation of nature. And it is above the flat Earth as a simple concept of this, plain disc thing with a dome over the top of it. So we're just going to jump right into discussion about how evolution and the Big Bang fit into or don't fit into the supernatural construct idea or even simulation, if that's where you're at. So, Lawrence, I want you to start off by talking about the lemon story.
All right. Yeah. Well. Okay, well, I've got a bit that I haven't got any lemons here to show you about that, so I'm going to do the equivalent one, and I can actually show you what it looks like, which was the French onion soup, which is just food, and made some French onion soup at Christmas, and it was really nice. So I thought I'd save this in case you want any later. We got the jug and we covered it in cling film, which sort of seals it in. And then left it, and of course you observe it, and after a while you start getting all this mold growing on the top, and you start thinking, well, how did that mold just happen to be in that bit of air next to the surface of that soup? Because the mold's eating the soup now. But I could have done that anywhere on Earth, sealed this jug full of soup, and there would have been some mold miraculously just happened to be in that portion of air that wants to eat that soup. And it's the same with the lemons. Most lemons that you buy today, you can buy them, your regular lemons, and they'll just shrivel up to a little tiny ball in your fruit bowl if you've got regular waxed lemons. But if you buy the organic ones, they usually come in a little bag of 3 or 4. And if I buy them, I eat them straight away. And if I forget to eat them, within 3 or 4 days, one of them has gone completely blue. And then when you touch it, all this blue dust comes out. Let me show you what this soup looks like anyway, just a sec.
Okay. So what Lawrence is going to, we're going to talk about is not only the macro, but the micro system.
This mold here was just waiting in this little patch of air, just in case I put some onion soup that it likes to eat. There it is. Look, can you see that inside there?
Oh, that's nasty.
Yeah. That evolved specifically. It evolved in the Big Bang. Specifically for French onion soup. It's probably a mold for everything.
Okay, so one of the things that we want to really pursue is evolution. Okay, now the Big Bang comes first, obviously, in the story, but then evolution of millions and billions of years got us to this very intricate system that we live in. And for example, I just recently watched a BBC special series with, you know, your favorite billions and billions of Guy Attenborough doing the dialogue. And of course, they show everything from fish to mammals to birds to plants, all different ecosystems across Earth, from tropical, subtropical, Antarctica, blah, blah, everywhere, everything, land, sea, and air. And when you get down to the intricacies of some of these organisms from each of the food chains, okay, you very quickly start to see that not only is this so perfected, but nobody could tell me anymore after, because I wouldn't have the opportunity to travel to all these places. These guys set up these cameras and do time-lapse stuff and zoom in to tiny creatures and so on, okay? But there's no way that all these different systems of life could all just have evolved from primordial ooze, as they've always called it. First of all, scientists have tried to replicate the primordial ooze concept and speed it up and provide all the nutrients that would have been here for A to mix with B to make C, and out of that just poof sprang some amoebas and so on. Okay, so it really brings it home when you watch one of these, you know, shows of animal top of the food chain kills something, you know, then it eats and its friends eat, and then the, you know, scavengers come in, and then the maggots and flies, and then and everything just keeps breaking down until there's really nothing left of whatever this is. And so not only that, that's on the macro scale. On the micro scale, you've got all of these microorganisms that are also a part of all of this organization system, from bacterias and phages and microbes and fungi and all that. Okay, so for those of you who came into this natural evolution into, well, maybe this is some kind of a simulation or construct from flat Earth, that's one group of people. Then you've got another group of people that came into it from a biblical sense, perhaps. And then maybe the science geek who believed in Big Bang and evolution and space travel and all that, and geeked into it by listening to some theoretical astrophysicist who said, oh, when you break it all down to its most minute portion, it's code, it's ones and zeros. And my question is, so nothing blew up, exploded into ones and zeros, and all those ones and zeros gathered together to make all of these different things and create this gigantic, unbelievably intricate system that we have on Earth right now. How? What do you got, John? Any thoughts on that?
Just listening to you speak about that, you know, they talk about evolution occurring over a certain amount of time. And, you know, Darwin says this, and there's fossil records, and, you know, there can be good and bad said about the fossil records, especially the dinosaurs. But I'm kind of reminded of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where in the movie
Guide to the Galaxy,
right at the end, they're like, well, you know, we're just finishing rebuilding it. We put everything all back together, you know, after the spoiler alert, after the Earth was exploded, and they built another one to replace it. Exactly as it was, and I don't know, it didn't take that long. But when I think of evolution, you know, what if there are, you know, we see evolution, we see evidence the geological records of things occurring, over long periods of time. And then there are things that occur in, brief moments, like, let's say, a cataclysm, like a volcano that goes off. When I look at the west side of the Hudson River, you see the Palisades Cliffs. And you think about, well, how did those cliffs jut up so high, and yet the river is so wide, and okay, you have to think, well, that couldn't. I kind of think that there are things in time that happen really briefly, really, quickly. Let's say, perhaps, let's say, within a generation, within one generation. That's a quick amount of time, speaking epically. So, yeah, evolution is still, a question in my mark. There's so many different things that have yet to be explored, like the bowels of the ocean, the striated rock formations that look like, a stretching of, the Earth's bottom plate, stretching out. So, yeah, but I like the Hitchhiker's Guide. That was done so quickly, kind of godlike too. Yeah.
Well, as far as, millions and millions or billions and billions, I mean, like I said, when I was watching this BBC special, it was very fascinating if you could just tune out David Attenborough, and watch the fabulous photographies and the captures of the whole synergy between certain plants and animals and birds and so on. And I was telling Lawrence earlier, one of the parts in the bird episode was speaking about this specific bird, and I wish I could think of the name of it now, but I've forgotten it. But the point is, something killed an animal. It was up in this very rocky, mountainous area, probably South America, Peru, somewhere. And the animal that killed the animal came in and ate its part. Okay. Then the scavengers came in and they ate their part. And then the vultures came in, and then, of course, you probably got some flies and maggots and beetles and other things that were, eating on this carcass. And this bird kept flying around, waiting for, time to go by until there was nothing left but bones. And the bird came down, picked up this large bone, and took off up into the air and flew around and dropped the big bone onto these rocks so that the bone splintered apart because it wanted to eat the bones. That's what its food thing was, eating the bones, the marrow. And so he had to break it apart into small enough pieces to eat the bones. Now,
Lori,
David Attenborough.
Yeah. Sorry, you're from
Um,
Florida, and the seagulls do that with the with the things around the beach, also with the clams and the crabs. They drop
Otters,
them.
Yeah, otters use rocks to break clams on their chest. Other animals use rocks to break apart seeds and coconuts and so on. Now, Attenborough is during this talking about evolution and about how this bird, not maybe this bird, but some bird back down the line, figured out, hey, I bet those bones are good. I'm going to go wait until they clean them off real good and let them dry out a little bit so they're more crackable. And then I'm going to go pick it up and I'm going to fly up in the air and I'm going to drop it on these rocks so that it will break apart in small enough pieces so I can eat it. And I'm going to teach my young that. Okay. Now, we all know. So what did you say, Lawrence?
Sorry. It's the bearded vulture. I sent you the link where you can see it. The bearded vulture.
Okay. Well, that's not the name I remember, but okay. But anyway, he's trying to say that this was some kind of evolutionary thinking of this bird that decided all of this. Hey, I'm going to want to eat those bones, so I'm going to wait till they clean them up, and then I'm going to, fly them up in the air. It even showed how the bird held the bone in its in its claws, the length of its body rather than sideways to keep the air, resistance down and so on. And I know there's some smart birds out there, okay? But some bird didn't just decide this one day and change their entire diet to eat large bones, okay? I'm sorry, that's not evolution. So this kind of thinking and dialogue went on throughout this whole show that I saw of evolution did that. Evolution caused that. That's part of evolution. This took millions of years, this species and blah, blah. So if you want to believe that, if you choose to believe that's the theory, be my guest. But we're moving on from that, because as far as I'm concerned, that's just one bird in one ecosystem, in one, one system of things. All right. Because something had to come along and kill the animal. Then something had to come along and eat the animal's meat. And then something else had to come along and clean off those bones. And then drying had to this had to be a long-term plan. If for somebody to some bird to just dream this up for the first time and then teach their young, and then it became like the collective consciousness of that species of bird from then on. I'm sorry, but to me that shows complete and utter evidence of a created system that was created perfectly to begin with, that every layer and every function of everything worked for the whole system.
It's kind of like the Indians.
Yeah.
Back in the day, they used all the parts of the settlers that they killed. And that was the great thing about that. An old Pawnee legend. Yeah.
I was going to tell you something that's quite interesting. I have mentioned this before, but it's more relevant now. Now we're on to supernatural construct. So, like I was telling you a couple of years ago, that you get these sea creatures with shells like crabs, and you can put them in water completely devoid of calcium, and they'll still grow a shell within a couple of days, which is made of calcium. So where is the calcium coming from? And the only thing the scientists can come up with is that the crab can transmute, that is, change other elements from, which is supposed to be the base of, what we're made of, elements, change it from that element into calcium. Otherwise, where did the calcium come from for the new shell? And then I was looking further into it, and they did this experiment with hens who lay eggs, and eggshells are calcium again. And so they deprive the hens of calcium to see whether they can still lay eggs. What happened after a few days? They started laying eggs with soft shells. But then what they did, they supplemented the diet, not with calcium, so there was still no calcium whatsoever. They gave them a diet that was rich in potassium. And lo and behold, they started laying out eggs again. And the shells were still made of calcium, but they haven't been given calcium, they've been given potassium. So the only conclusion you can draw is that hens can transmute potassium into calcium. Well, they're both on the same periodic table. Did chemistry at school, potassium, I think they are, anyway, potassium and calcium. Well, they're transmuting it, which is magic. So if a hen can change one element into another, it figures that man can probably change base metals into gold, which is why we have gold as the supreme metal.
Well, Lawrence, a while back you mentioned something about the coconut oil and the ketones. that's like an alternate, energy source for, the cells in our body. That's sort of like, we also can have the ability to intake and do this like sort of hybrid function. I don't know what that produces. I guess it produces energy. I don't know what other byproducts might be, created as a result of, I mean, it is a different, reaction, at the base level of our cells. But, when you mentioned that, and I saw that video that you shared about the potassium permanganate and how that, sort of volcano effect of everything just sort of, exploded. It was like candle wax, but like so quick. That was fast. And that was like, it looked like coral or bone. It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I imagine if you did that on a large scale, what that would do. Did it on a city.
Okay, so now let's go. Let's go off in for a second. All right, so back to the construct. Another hot topic, well, a couple of other hot topics that have been going on for the last year have been both mud floods and Tartaria. And everybody, this kind of stuff is sort of goes viral. Once a group of people like flat earthers, for example, or when people came into the flat earth community, they all friended all the other flat earthers so that they would have common friends to talk to and, talk about flat earth. And so, I guess in social media, that's a natural evolution to happen. And so when Mandela Effect came out, when mud floods came out, Tartaria, it sort of spread around because people started sharing similar videos and similar ideas and so on. But it's kind of interesting that nobody really clicked into the reset idea immediately, insofar as it being a construct. Nobody seems to have been able to explain how where all this mud came from and how it all just came in and flooded around these different cities. Of course, that led to the foundlings, and that led to, reestablishing cities after they were, dug out and people put back in them and so on. Now, let me give you an idea that I've been thinking about with regards to all of that, because it's all going to have to figure in somehow into, because people have been doing just monstrous hours of research. What's interesting, two things. All of these photographs of these old cities and these old buildings that never seemed to be around before suddenly just start popping up out of nowhere. It's like, oh my gosh, look at, here's a city with, and all of the photographs of all of these cities didn't have any people in them, or very few. That was another, sort of, reset thing, mud flood thing. Oh, they wiped out tons of people and they're all in the mud. Well, one thing that I have to wonder is, where are all those bones? Where are all those bodies? Okay. Then you've got somebody to jump in and say, well, the catacombs, and look at all of these bone-filled catacombs everywhere. And, lines and lines and lines and rows of femurs and skulls and arm bones. And, they even made little decorations out of them underground in these catacombs. All right. Okay. We don't know that wasn't from some pandemic or from some, cataclysmic thing, but yeah, it's a lot of bones. Okay. But
Satan could have just made them, couldn't he?
Somebody could have made them. Somebody could have made photographs. Okay. If you're going to think about simulation, or you're going to think about a construct, then you have to be mentally prepared to understand that all of this stuff could have been manufactured for whatever reason at the time, right before the time they need it. Because just like when Flat Earth came out, nobody seemed to give a rat's butt about all these old maps until all of a sudden all these round circle maps and maps of Mount Meru and maps of, other lands outside of the dome, Antarctica Circle, and just boom, there were maps out the wazoo. And of course, they're made to look old. If you were going to make an old map, wouldn't you make it look old? Well, then suddenly all the old maps started looking all the same kind of old. Okay. It's like nobody had a new creative old to jump in there. And so the other thing is, okay, so now we're inundated with tons of old city pictures and and we all know that for them to be online, someone either had to dig them up out of a box of old pictures or out of an old photo album of old pictures or out of old newspapers and magazines, archive them, upload them onto the internet and for everyone to see. And boom, there's hundreds and hundreds of them. Okay. So pardon me, as the critical thinker that I am, for questioning where the hell did all of these perfectly good looking photos of old stuff come from all of a sudden. And people would say, well, it's a causation reaction thing. People became interested in it. So people started digging around for old photos and they started putting them online. Okay. But all of the old photos don't have any people in them. And then now everybody's trying to have to come up with an excuse for why there's no people. Well, then, hey, here's a good one. There was a reset and they, put new people into these towns after they dug them up. Here's my very long, convoluted intro to this question. Is this going to happen with construct? Is this going to happen with simulation? Is all of a sudden people are going to start coming up with simulation reset stuff? That's what first part of the question. The second part of the question is, I 100% believe in resets because logic took me there. And if I'm wrong, I will correct myself later. But here's my logic. The sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets or fallen or wandering stars, whichever you prefer to call them, are all synchronized and have a repeating pattern and come back around. Okay. And I forget right now what the length of the pattern is, but the pattern is known well enough that anyone could say when there's going to be a solar or a lunar eclipse hundreds of years into the future. The pattern is that set. Okay, so that constitutes a repeating pattern. Anytime you have a repeating pattern, what does that bring you to? What is this symbol? Infinity. Infinity is not that. Infinity is not a linear line that goes on forever. Infinity is represented as a loop. It's a closed loop. It
lemon skate
keeps repeating. Okay. So if the stars, moon, sun, planets, Halley's Comet, Nibiru, whatever, keeps recycling, and the Antikythera device is a perfect example of they found the pattern, right? Then why wouldn't there be a pattern to reset the earth? All of it. Every so many thousands or hundreds of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, it gets reset. To go with all of that, and maybe they're on the same timeline, the sun, moon, stars, blah, blah, reset, okay? Because nobody is around long enough to watch a full cycle of the sun, moon, and stars gig, okay? So sorry for all of that, but I'm not going to talk for a while. So you guys, what do you think about all that idea?
But what if there was someone around to see all of that? You wouldn't know them. They wouldn't show themselves. They'd be hidden.
Well, that's true. if you have a what is called and what's the word now? I can't think of it. Somebody who's immortal being.
Highlander.
Okay.
Highlander type. One of those
I mean,
Highlander types.
Okay, and there are trees that are, very, very old, but trees don't talk, so they can't tell us, hey, any minute now a reset's going to happen.
The giant sequoia, they're like ages old. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so Lawrence, what do you think about there being an automatic reset click? In other words, we've come to the end of one cycle of this.
Like your washing machine. Yeah, cycle. It's like the Yugas, isn't it? I mean, the Yugas were all, groups of years when people were so tall and lived so long, and we're, and everything is going downhill, starting off from the golden age or whatever it is, when men lived to be 100,000 years old and were really tall, and then men weren't quite so nice, and there was one in the middle, and then we're now in the lowest of the low, and society is getting so depraved until it can't get any worse, and then this era ends, and then we go back into a better age, and apparently that's the Kali Yuga that we're in now, and some say it will end in 2025, and then we're heading for pleasant times, and all this shit's going to stop.
But will you be here for it? Because how does the reset happen? Do you get to stay, or does everybody go when the reset happens?
Well, yeah, I don't know.
Otherwise, because, we've talked about this before. The Bible talks about the ages of some of the old biblical characters. Why do you think they say, oh my God, he's as old as Methuselah? Because Methuselah lived to be 800 or 900 years old. Okay. And so based on the generations that we have alive at any one time today, based on our normal human lifespan, the maximum typically would be 3 to 4 generations are alive in the same family at the same time. So, but if they lived to be that many hundreds of years old back then, and people still reproduced at the same ages as they do now, we could have had up to 50 generations of people alive at any one given time back then. Now, it's pretty hard to change things right in front of their eyes while all those people are living and watching. Okay. So because they would talk about it and they would write it down. Go, John. What do you got?
Yeah, that's funny. You mentioned somebody living for several generations, being old, I don't know, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. And, you talk about the successive generations. What if that one generation is still reproducing? What if that one generation that's 200 years old has been reproducing the whole time, like a queen bee wasp or something? I mean, I'm not saying that's possible. I'm just saying that's, if we want to explore a lot of different options, boy, you could get a lot of the same DNA out of someone, that was 200 years old that could, be like, let's say, injecting that into, I don't know how many, 3, 4, 5 successive generations and still being a parent. That blows cloning out of the water.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Is that a strange concept? I don't know.
Yeah. It's fascinating, the fact,
Oh, no, I've got this dumb look on my face because you were buffering that whole time and I was having to put all of that together.
Well, I heard it.
What, Lawrence?
I heard what John was saying here, yeah, and there may well be, I think there probably are immortals amongst us, and certainly the angels are about, and they're immortal, aren't they? So they get to see what's going on. But they themselves are going to be part of the construct. Everything is part of the construct apart from whoever made it. That's
well, okay. How could you have all these different kinds of levels of spirits and beings and, you know, angels, demons, we can't see, humans in one platform of the reality, angels and demons in another platform of the reality, blah, blah. To me, that was one of the first things when I really thought about it that screamed at me that it's a construct.
It's the machine. You're not thousands of miles away now. According to science, you're 4,100 miles away from where I am, but you're not. The space between us is an illusion. There is no space. We're all in the same machine. And in the machine, there isn't any gaps. It's everything simultaneous.
It's all seamless. And which is why I have to keep coming back to Pac-Man. When we hit on Pac-Man as the explanation for why how the diamond Collignon map that you came up with worked, and everybody's like, oh, I mean, they just lost their minds. It's like, oh my God, Pac-Man, you went there. Oh, and so much fun we had. It made fun of it and the whole thing. Okay, well, now if you understand it from a construct vantage point, understanding theory, then Pac-Man is not a weird thing at all. Okay. I don't care what PAC stands for. I don't care that Pac-Man is a little guy in a machine. It's an analogy. It's an explanation for how you go off this side and you come back on this side. That's all it was. So, you know, all of those that lost their minds over it, now maybe you can better understand what we were thinking when we said, oh, Pac-Man, okay, that's how it can work. Well, that automatically leads to how does Pac-Man work? Well, Pac-Man can only work in a construct, in a platform. And so the problem that happens, though, is that's why I say supernatural construct, because I cannot put it in a diamond and I cannot define how it mechanically works, but because I didn't design it and I haven't even got to see it in its entirety. Okay, I can only see it out of these two eyes and off of a screen on a TV. That's the only way I can view it. So the rest of it has to be, you know, imaginary in my head. I have to try to draw it, create it in my head, how it can work. Am I as creative as God? Oh, hell no. But I can understand that a God, a creator of the magnitude that could create something like this. But let's break it down. Maybe in the reset before this one or before that one or before that one, there were giants. And maybe, you know, Lawrence went into a deal one time talking about if the giant was this tall, his gait, his foot span, walking span would have been 30 miles a foot. You know, every time he took another step, he could cross the earth in like an hour, you know, just walking. And so you go, you know, can't hardly get my mind wrapped around that. Well, what if it was bigger? The whole platform was bigger then compared to the size of the people, of the giants, of the large creatures. It would have felt as large to them then as ours feels to us now. Okay. What if one of these resets shrunk the space? You know, because it became like, well, if I can do it in that scale, well, then I can certainly miniaturize it down to this scale and we'll just freeze off that outside area and they just won't need to go there anymore. Okay. I mean, if you have an imagination, you can, you know, speculate all you want. Are we here just to speculate? That's part of it, because how do you, you know, wrap your mind around something if you don't do that, you know? I mean, so if in a reset at any one of these resets, things shrunk smaller and smaller and smaller. Noah's Ark is a perfect example, the Ark story, okay? Whether you believe that is a biblically, just a story to tell you how something happened, or whether it actually happened that way, think about this. The ark was supposed to be X cubits by X cubits and this big, and each of the animals that we're going to, reseed the earth with are going to be put on this ark. Nobody talked about insects, but you have to kind of think, well, I'm sure they were crawling around in there. And the funguses no, you don't have to think about all that because they're in the primordial ooze now, and they'll just come back. So was that such a stretch of the imagination in that construct to gather up these people and these animals and these birds and put them on a boat and then flood everything and then start over? Because somebody was there to tell about it. Somebody was there to okay, so if that happened, if it didn't happen, then it's just an imaginary childhood story that somebody put in a book and made it into a Bible, holy book. So either way you look at it, it has to be an analogy for something. And so now let's move off yet again, because I've been thinking a lot about this proving the construct thing. Okay. How can you prove something if you're in it? Right? If you can't get out of it, and you're in it, that's what a lot of people are saying. Well, if you're in the machine, you would know, because they would make everything so lifelike, like the Matrix. You would bleed when you're caught, and you would hurt when you're, in pain, and so on and so on. And that's all electrical systems and code. Okay, what if it is? What if we are in a machine? What if we are in a box? How then does the supernatural aspect work? And do you know what I mean by supernatural aspect?
Well, I do. I don't know what
Okay.
Well,
it's like,
could you clarify? Just
Okay, I'm going to say supernatural is
Sorry.
anything that is above nature, man's understanding of natural law. Okay? Not only above or beyond. So it's like uber nature, supernatural. Okay? Man has been defining nature for as long as man's been thinking about it, right? And doing experiments and making science. And there are some things that science can't explain, won't explain, or best case, haven't even tried, right? Haven't even tried. Nobody's tried to explain UFOs to people. Nope, they don't exist. Sorry. Got me? Know where I'm going now? That is the supernatural I'm talking about.
yeah. So what's your take on this, Lori, John? Okay, so that what these supernatural changes have been happening, changing the reality that we thought we knew in the past to a different reality. And I've been buying up DVDs where these changes have been going. So I got this one, which was Moonraker. Okay, and it's got Jaws and Dolly, and there's a scene towards the end where Jaws is in one of these cable cars, and it comes crashing down, and he's got it round his head, and Dolly comes to help lift it off him, and he smiles at her, and he's got all these big metallic teeth, and then Dolly smiles back, and she's got these big heavy metal braces. But when you look now, she doesn't have the braces. Nowhere. Every DVD that you buy, there's no braces. So somebody has supernaturally changed all these DVDs on the shelves in DVD shops, in people's homes, in warehouses all over the world. Somebody's gone and changed the code on this DVD to take the braces off her teeth.
That already exists.
That was on the original
Altered
that
something.
that was on this DVD when it was made. But it's not there now.
Okay, so they've altered something that already exists.
Yeah.
Okay, not something on the internet and not something, you know, I mean, it's something that already was manufactured. Okay, so now,
How are they
I
doing
don't
that?
remember, because I'm not going to be a good guinea pig for this because I'm sure I saw Moonraker, but I was not a big 007 fan, so I don't remember. I do remember the Jaws with the teeth. I mean, that's why they called him Jaws. But
They
I
were
don't
in
remember.
Rio.
Don't remember the girl.
Rio.
Part
Rio.
of the scene.
Awesome.
It's
Yeah.
like the love scene, Laurie. It's the love scene. The scene would be pointless without the braces on her teeth.
It was
You know,
Rio. They were
It's
coming
crazy.
down from the mountain of the whatever with the statue in Rio, and they're coming down the cable car.
Everybody
Yeah.
remembers
So,
the braces.
so John, you remember the braces?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I've actually no. You know what? I'll tell you this. What on cable TV, on Stars channel, on cable TV, Stars Encore, whatever you want to call it. They play a lot of 007 reruns, like everything from like Sean Connery to Roger Moore and even Timothy Dalton and the other guy from whatever.
All the different ones. Right.
And they still play a version with Moonraker with the girl that has her braces. So they haven't changed
Okay,
it on
so
cable TV in
Lawrence.
America. Just want to let you know.
I got you. Okay. I'm going to take you two guys' word for that because you both saw it and you both remember it. Okay. So now we have to decide if the DVD that Lawrence bought has been altered prior to him getting it because it's different than the original movie that he saw when it came out. Somebody would have to do some research and say somewhere between the original airing of the film and the production of DVDs, because that's many, many years ago, the production of DVDs, was there a remake? Was there a scene change that they did on purpose to change the film, you know, because they have different endings for films and stuff like that, right? But if then, because it's the way I think, if they changed it, okay. If they didn't, then you have just described an alteration in the construct. Now, who can alter the construct? And this is a very important part of understanding the construct. Obviously, the creator can alter the construct. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't imagine with all the shit going on in the world that God, the creator, would bother with altering a movie plot DVD. Okay. Can't imagine that would be a priority. Okay. So that would mean someone else has the ability to alter the construct. Now, this is where the submatrix comes in. Okay. There's one thing to alter, and then now this is where I know some people don't like me to use the word matrix because then it actually gets all bogged down in the Matrix movie, but we're going to use it as a term. Here's the construct original Matrix. The world, the plants, the animals, the ecosystem, the sun, the wind, the moon, the stars, the oceans, the construct. Take all the people out of it. Okay. Just the natural construct. Now let's put the people and the animals and all of that. Oh, oops, sorry. In there. That probably just hurt somebody's ears. And now we have the natural ecosystem. With regards to the ability to alter material objects, man-made material objects. Can someone alter a tree? Can someone alter a dog? Yes. Breeding and, crossbreeding and all that, but you can't do it like poof, you're different. You can do it over time, but you can't poof right now. This mango tree is going to turn into a persimmon tree. Poof. Not happening. But man-made objects in the construct, I think can be manipulated by internal forces working on the submatrix, the man-made part of this. Okay. To me, that's kind of a way to explain it. Now, if that doesn't make sense, just maybe listen to that again. But you can't alter nature, but you can alter man-made. Okay. Are you guys with me on that? Okay. So now, let's say you make a system like our monetary system and our legal system and our court system, and that's the same thing, and our governmental systems. Okay, those are all man-made systems. That is not a part of the natural construct. That's what we've decided to do. All the things that we have made, we have built buildings. God didn't build any buildings, not that I know of. All the things that we have done, I think, can be altered in the code of the construct from within. That would appear to be supernatural, but it isn't. If you really break down my original explanation of supernatural, man made the laws of nature. Man described them, defined them, tested them. But those things that man hasn't touched upon, nobody can explain how UFOs are going around, coming in and out of here and disappearing fast as light, because they break the laws of nature that man has defined. They go faster than the speed of sound, faster than the speed of light. Poof, they're there. Poof, they're gone. How do you define that in man's natural law? And that's why I said, not only haven't they figured it out, or can they figure it out, but they won't even try. Because automatically when you start talking about supernatural, what happens? Ooh, you're out in the goo-goo, people. You're out in the weirdo land. You know, you're talking about things that nobody can see
You're
or touch
labeled
or
a
feel.
kook.
You're labeled a kook. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. Kook.
Yeah. Yeah. I had an interesting thought as well when I went to Anglesey for a few days, and I was sat outside the pub, and the tide had gone right out. It had gone way out. And I was just thinking, we've got rivers, and rivers just go one way because there's a gentle slope taking in all the rivers down to lower areas and eventually the sea. But with the sea it has to go uphill and downhill for it to go in and out. Unless it was perfectly flat, which it isn't, there's obviously going to be undulations. The sea's got to go uphill and downhill. It's got to flow in and it's got to flow out. And yet they say it's controlled by the moon, which vanishes for sometimes. And it's, you've got tides all over the world coming in and going out, and the moon's 10,000 miles away. So we know that that's just been something that's been made up for tides. So the tides themselves are part of the code. They're just coded to come in and go out.
Part of the construct, right?
They're defying this substance they call gravity. The tides have to flow uphill to either come in or go out, depending on what the lie of the underlying surface is. It's either uphill or downhill. And whichever way they're going, they're either going downhill or uphill. Well, water doesn't flow uphill, but it does in the sea. Something is pushing water uphill.
Yeah, something is pulling and pushing water. That's correct. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing with tsunamis. Okay.
Yeah.
They always tell you, well, there was an earthquake over here and that pulled the water over there. And then that pushed all that water all at one time into a surge and just went over Indonesia or wherever it went.
Well, we have a unique situation here in the Hudson Valley. We have the Hudson River, which, as far as I know, is one of the only rivers that flows both ways. It flows obviously down to New York City, Manhattan. But yeah, basically, if you get above West Point or Newburgh and just about Poughkeepsie, is just about where the back and forth tide occurs. Now, this is a north to south river. This isn't like an east west river, anything that, might be like really moved by the east west moving of the moon. And I'm not going to say the sun. No, wait, I'm sorry. The sun, the moon, the sun. It's the sun, not the moon. Yes, that's right. So, I mean, it's fascinating as technically really a north-south river, and which actually had to surprisingly pierce through the Bear Mountain region, which is just south of West Point. It's a mountain, and the river actually eroded through a mountain. I don't know how a river erodes up a mountain and down the other side of a mountain or vice versa, but apparently there's a mountain that was eroded by a river on both sides in the Hudson Valley, and that's Bear Mountain. And the Hudson River, which flows both ways. Yes. Fascinating region I live in. Did that buffer, Lori?
Well, okay, so we know the moon does not cause the tides. We know that. I mean, all you have to do is observe. I mean, I live in Sarasota, Florida, right on the Gulf of Mexico. Okay. We do have high and low tide every day, twice a day, right? And up until a couple days ago, there was no moon. You couldn't see the moon. The moon's on the other side, like Lawrence said. And so how is the moon on the other side pulling and pushing what? Well, of course, it's pulling water from over here and that's what's pulling it out. Well, no, it's pulling it out everywhere. I mean, they know when the tide is going to happen. Okay. And so if you question, okay, let me start that sentence over. One of the things that I noticed about flat earthers is when they started looking into flat earth and they started to run into all these anomalies that said, well, this can't be a globe, a spinning globe with, blah, blah, and the thousands of miles and the spinning and the vortexing and the sun and the whole whatchahoozy. Then they started talking about it to other people, and other people were asking them questions. Well, what about well, in order to not look stupid, like you're just following some cult of flat earthers, you tried to come up with a flat earth answer for why this doesn't work. Okay. Now it works. It seems to work on that. Explanations were based on that circle map and model, which didn't work. Okay, when put under the microscope, and not a very strong one. And so their answers started to break down. But the questions that remained was, if your explanation for how this moon works and this apogee-perigee story and these earthquakes and volcanoes and tides and all that stuff works on your circle or your globe, we need to come up with an answer for how it works on the flat earth map. And then one after another, fail, another fail, and even more fails. Okay. Which made a lot of people call the flat earthers kooks because they could not put the theory of how things happen in an understandable way that actually worked with observable, repeatable science. Now, in a construct, it's a system, okay? The system works without whether you like it or not, whether you believe in it or not. And it works whether you believe it's a globe, whether you believe it's a flat earth. It still works, okay? So now you come to the point where you go, well, if it works here and it works here and it works there, then it works, right? So someone asked me today, or asked in a thread I was on Facebook, they got to talking about conscious and subconscious mind. And they said, well, do you need your consciousness to breathe and digest food and so on? And then the answer obviously was no, you don't need to think about every breath you take and every time your heart beats. You don't have to like cause it to happen, think it into being. And then someone said, well, that's that's because that's your subconscious mind. Really? I don't know about your subconscious mind, but my subconscious mind wanders all over the place and has not got the focus to keep the heart beating and the breathing going and the blinking and the swallowing and all the other stuff. Okay. So now we know it's not the conscious mind and it's not the subconscious mind. So what is it? And of course, I'm like, that shit's autopilot. Okay. You don't have to, the body is a machine on autopilot. You don't have to think about breathing. And now you can think about slowing your breathing. You know, you can be nervous and go, okay, slow the breath. Now you can alter it once you put your focus into it. But the human body is on autopilot. It does not need you to think about it. All right. And then someone said, well, what about, then I said, why don't you think your body into death? Try to think your body to stop beating its heart and stop swallowing and stop breathing. Think it real hard. Try. Well, have you ever heard about those Tibetan monks that could, go into this deep trance and they died? No, they didn't die. No, they didn't. No, they weren't dead. They were in a trance state. They were in a coma state. Okay. That took years and years and years for them to even be able to get in that kind of a state, to slow their breathing down to where it seemed like death and so on. But the minute I thought about that, can you think yourself dead? Just think it. And the answer is no. So that means you have zero control of your autopilot of your body. Something has to kill you, whether you do it yourself or you get hit by a freight train. Okay, something has to kill you, or all your systems have to break down one after the next, slowly but surely, heart attack, whatever. Okay, but it's a system shutdown problem, one program at a time, right? And because, I'm sorry, they had a heart attack, but they're not brain dead, or they are brain dead, but their heart's still beating and we've got them on a respirator on life support. Now, bottom line to all of that is you're not even in control of your machine that you got going on here. And your mind can make you feel sad, and your mind can make you feel happy, and your mind can make you cry. But actually, sometimes you can cry and you don't even really want to. You're just like, no, don't cry. No, not now. Don't cry. And boom, there comes tears. Too bad. And so my question is, does that in any way say this is a construct? Because something can strike you dead without your knowledge at any given moment. But also, you can't kill yourself. I mean, you can't think yourself dead. What do you think? Excuse me.
Has anyone ever fainted? Have you ever fainted,
Yeah,
Lori,
fainted.
Lawrence?
Uh-huh.
Have you fainted?
It's
Okay.
terrifying.
You faint? Have you ever fainted, Lawrence?
Let me tell you about my fate. I was on a
Okay.
campsite in Dinard in Brittany, northern France, and this ambulance came round. Red Cross it was, to people who want to gather blood. So I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And there was this guy up opposite me with this bag of blood, and he was squeezing a rubber ball or something, and I felt a bit queasy. The next thing, I was on my back, but it was like trying to escape from a prison. When you go unconscious, it's like you're in a prison and you don't know where you are, and you're trying to break out of it. It's quite frightening when you're coming round, you know. You
Yeah.
don't know where you
Okay.
are.
So John, what is
Yes.
feigning? What how are you relating feigning?
Well, no, I mean, I was just curious if you had like fainting experience. I had one experience where I fainted, and I was outdoors, just outside the house, and just I don't know it. I couldn't say it was, let's say, the heat from the sun. It was the summer, but it wasn't any sort of heat stroke, anything. But yeah, it just sort of like fell like a sack of potatoes, like a puppet that got its strings crossed, and for some reason. I just hit my chin on a concrete step, and I was like, I shuddered. I was like, oh, I was like, I had all my strength again, but it was the strangest thing to just be like sort of cut off for a
So
brief moment.
what do you think causes that system shutdown? I mean, without any warning. There's no like little,
Well, it wasn't.
sometimes there is. Sometimes there's a warning. Well,
Well, like
you start get lightheaded and oh, I need to sit down or whatever.
Well, like you said, though, it wasn't necessarily a shutdown because it wasn't, cut. I wasn't necessarily cut off completely. There was no, let's say, death moment. So I don't know how to explain that except for fainting, except that it's strange.
There you go. It's the part.
Lori's buffering. You're buffering, Lori.
Part system shutdown. Oh, I am. I think I'm going to drop out and come back in. You guys talk.
Okay, so let's talk.
Yeah,
Fainting, the
I
Earth,
did.
Matrix.
I did.
Tell me, Lawrence.
I was at the British Open golf about 10 years ago at Hoy Lake in the Wirral. I think Tiger Woods won that year. And I got some tickets to go for the day. And it was really hot. And I didn't get to watch much of the golf. I had to go and sit down. I just felt that ill, because it was whatever, but I was really fit. And it was weird. It was like somebody had just struck me. So I had to go and sit in the stand on the 17th or whatever and watch the golfers come in, it's quite freaky being hit. I mean, for you it will be just a regular sort of day, but we don't get the weather that you get, and you get sort of really freaky weather.
Well, we get a lot of humid weather, and a lot of times the humidity really can cause a problem with people's breathing. Especially in the large cities where it just gets the heat gets trapped and the humidity builds up. It's difficult to walk on the streets of New York City during the summer. That's why you see some ladies walking around in their bikinis or underwear. Well, granted, they can go topless in New York State, so they can do that on the streets of New York City, go topless. But yeah, there's something to be said about this loss of, not a loss, let's say like a temporary incapacitation. It's a temporary incapacitation where you're not necessarily in control. Let's say you still have your thought functions. You don't necessarily have your motor functions if you're fainting and falling. your physical, muscles, let's say, give way, but
Yeah.
but your mind still records and remembers, throughout, you go, oh, I remember that I blocked out, it's not like, let's say, getting blackout drunk where you pass out and you don't remember anything, or being, drugged by some sort of, roofie, but just that temporary incapacitation. Even though that exists, the memory persists. The memory is recorded and persists, which is amazing.
Yeah, I know. But don't you think that people are really stupid sometimes, buying some of these stories that we're told? I mean, could you imagine? I mean, you look where New York is. Yeah, it's on a similar latitude to Madrid in Spain. Really, really hot places. It can get extremely hot. And yet, on that same latitude, if you drew a line from New York to Madrid, along that line, you're going to find the place where the Titanic was hit by a fucking iceberg on that latitude. I mean, it's just complete. But how are you going to get a fucking iceberg at 40 degrees north? You ain't. It's ridiculous.
Well, you could. Well, you could drive it. I mean, well, if you remember the movie Brewster's Millions, they tried to sell Monty Brewster, played by Richard Pryor, on an iceberg. He's like, we're gonna take this iceberg from the Arctic and we're gonna put a motor on the back of it and we're gonna drive it to Africa and give all these people fresh water. And they're like, Monty, it's gonna melt by then. But the Atlantic is a cold, gray place, especially in winter. So anything's possible. You could move an iceberg. You could shift an iceberg, don't you think? Don't you think you could shift an iceberg?
They could have thought of a better way.
Oh, it would take months to melt an iceberg in the ocean.
Why would they have an iceberg? I mean, why would you make such a limp excuse for one that's very implausible? Right, we're going to scuttle this ship, the Titanic, because, an insurance job or whatever. We want to kill all the people on it, or whatever it was. Why didn't they just say, it had some structural failure?
What are the other?
They can't say that.
What are the other possibilities? Was it a water mine? Was it a submarine?
It's ridiculous. Fucking
how many rich people were on the Titanic?
The banksters who were against the Rothschilds starting whatever.
The engine blew up and it blew a hole in the side of the ship and it sank.
They just wanted to get back to Newport, Rhode Island, those banksters.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get back on topic here. All right, so am I buffering to anyone right now?
You sound good now.
Am I buffering?
You were a little bit before, but you're good now.
Well, you are to me. That's why I'm asking if I am to you. Sorry, those listening, for all this chatter. Okay, so, all right, supernatural construct. There's a very specific reason why I'm using those terms. Okay, construct is not a matrix, but it is. But is it does it say the word simulation? No. This is all corporeal. As far as I'm concerned, the big matrix, the big construct, it is, it's air and water and land and wind and earthquakes, and it's all that to the degree that we think it is. We're given 5 senses, none of which are as good as individual other species have on their 5 senses. We already know we don't smell as good as dogs can. Okay. We already know we can't see as well as far as hawks can, on and on. All right. So each of the different species here sees this construct differently than we do, because they have different senses set up than we do. I mean, if you're a snake, the world looks a whole lot different than if you're a vole or a muskrat or a bird, right? So we only have our own, these scientists are always constantly, oh, the pigs are so intelligent. The dolphins are the highest intelligent, blah, blah. And they look at these monkeys, how intelligent they are. Well, if they're so intelligent, which one of them made a hydrogen bomb? Whatever. Okay. Humans did that. So now let's go off into tinkering with the submatrix. And I was talking to you at the beginning, Lawrence, about mission creep. Mission creep is when, let's say, for example, the government thinks 10 years down the road and that they want agenda, or 20 years down the road, that they want agenda 21 to be the law of the land everywhere. And they think that we should have a one world government, and it should be, all filtered out through the United Nations and so on. Okay. So they set about a mission to make that happen. Now, everybody who read that was a little creeped out, and it was like, I don't know if I like this idea about everybody living in stacking packs in the cities, and you can't go out in the wild land, and you can't own any property out in these other places. And pretty soon now you're thinking about charging me tax to breathe, and because of carbon emission, whatever hoogie. And so, but regardless of what you want and what I want, mission creep set in. And systematically and nice and slowly, they started implementing more rules, more laws, and more dictates. And before you know it, no matter whether you screamed about it 20 years ago or you're screaming about it right now, there will come a day when mission creep succeeds on whatever the mission is. Okay. And I'll give you another example. All of us have been seeing chemtrail lines in the sky. Some of us have been run the full gauntlet on that. Oh my God, it's chemtrails, all the way over to, well, we can't really test and see if this is it. And we don't know if that, we know they're not contrails, but are they actually spraying and going through the whole thing? And then suddenly, after all these years of seeing these lines in the sky and telling people that ain't normal and those aren't clouds and all that stuff, now suddenly they've come out and actually said, we're going to start geoengineering the sky to dim the sun to keep the global warming thing from happening. And now it's just normal. Now somehow we granted ourselves permission during the last creep to make that it's completely normalized now. And anyone who never looked up and saw them and always looked at you like you were a kook for talking about chemtrails now goes, see, it was all this innocuous thing from the beginning. You guys got all freaked out for nothing. There's nothing wrong. Really? That's not wrong? I didn't give permission for them to spray shit in my sky. Did you? Well, no. Well, by not having said anything, you did, because just shutting up is consent. So the longer this time goes by with this little system they've implemented and then spread and then grew like the blob, and then, exponentially it came over everything, land, sea. Did you know what the word law stands for? Land, air, and water. Did you know that? Law? LAW, land, air, and water. It's the law of the land, air, and water. So laws are their agenda, not ours. It used to be back in the day, people used to say, well, they ought to pass a law, when somebody did something wrong. So now, mission creep. Is it even possible, if they can change a CD in a bookstore, waiting for somebody to come along and buy it, a DVD, from braces to no braces, does anybody really think that any of us who do not have the capabilities to alter the submatrix can? Using what? What technology do we have as people living in this submatrix? What abilities or technology do we have to put a stop to it other than non-compliance or violence?
Well, the problem is because of the number of, that this NPC keeps coming into the equation. It'd all be stopped if there wasn't, a huge percentage of humans not being humans. So
Non-player characters?
They're the majority, and they're not going to revolt. They may revolt as sheep if everybody else does. But put it this way:
do you think they know they're NPCs, Lawrence?
Maybe not. No, but if all the people in the so-called truth movement all got together and took action, millions of them, then you would get some results. But we can't even do that, can we? Because we're all protesting from our armchairs or on a keyboard. Very few people.
Oh yeah, we're all sitting around watching the French in their yellow vests, going, "You go, guys!
Yeah, but
Get them!"
Anything like that? We let them do things without. I mean, turn the clock back. Let's go back to 1980, right? You can have a cigarette at home with your breakfast. You can have a cigarette on the way down to the bus. Get on the bus and you have a cigarette on the bus. You get off the bus, have a cigarette, get to work. You can sit at your desk, do your business, do your work, have your old-fashioned computer, have a cigarette, your ashtray at work while you're working, go down for a break, have a cigarette. Now, fucking hell, now you can't do any of that, right? And if you need a tradesman to come round, so I had to get someone from the gas board to come round for a problem with the gas. And the gas, so I rang up to get the gas man to come out. And they said, do you smoke, sir? I says, yeah, I smoke. He says, would you mind refraining from smoking on the morning that the guy from the gas man comes? Because this is his place of work and you're not allowed to smoke. So if somebody's coming to your house, you're being told now by these, utility companies that you can't have a cigarette in your own house because somebody's coming around to fix a gas leak.
Lawrence, I'll do you one better. The nation of Canada, just north of us, America, the nation of Canada, it is now, based on a new law, allowable for any Canadian police officer to actually give you a breathalyzer to see whether you are drunk in your own home. A Canadian police officer can go to your home and say, for whatever reason, whatever the situation arises, he is allowed to go, oh, well, I can give you a breathalyzer. And if you don't consent to a breathalyzer test because you're in your own home, he can then arrest you.
What?
Yes. Look it up, please. It is a travesty
Okay,
of law.
this is what got me started.
So
this is true. This is absolutely true.
So
this is a 2019 law. This is true.
What's the charge going to be?
What if you just drove home?
Hey?
What if you just drove home and you just tipped a glass of wine and a cop comes over and says, I'm going to give you a breathalyzer. And you go like, no, you're not. Well, you're under arrest, buddy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, here we go. This is what got me started on mission creep this morning. Okay. We can call it agenda creep. You can call it whatever you want. This is this month's, is that backwards to you guys? Okay. This is this month's ARP magazine. Do you know what ARP is? It's for old people. You have to be 50 years old to be a member plus. Okay, so once you become a member, you get this magazine as part of your deal. Okay, so this was in this month's, and it's called Home Wars. All right. So I'm scanning through the magazine because I want to see what's going on with old people. So this is called Home Wars, older community association members who fall behind on fees face increasingly harsh treatment. So it talks about this lady, 51 years old, homeowner in Tampa, Florida, learned the hard way that dealing with a homeowners association, HOA, can escalate into a costly and years-long legal battle. In 2015, Lally got nearly $700 behind on the $135 a month association fees on her 5-bedroom home. She explained to the association's manager that she faced financial hardship while caring for her sick parents and asked to work out a payment plan. The management company that contracts with her homeowners association told her it would take the issue to the association board. But 2 months later, as Lally waited for a response, she got a letter from a law firm saying that a lien had been filed on her home. Lally decided to fight. More than 3 years later, Lally's HOA claims she owes nearly $15,000. About $10,000 of that came from attorney's fees, interest, and other charges. I refuse to bend because it's not right, says Lally. Those whose court case is ongoing, it's cruel that they are aiming to put me out of my home. There are more than 345,000 community associations, or CAs, in a term that includes homeowners associations, condo associations, and co-ops in America today, compared with just 10,000 in 1970. Almost 1 in every 4 Americans belong to a CA, according to the Community Associations Institute. Now, right there, you can see this little chart, okay? This is 1970, and this is 2017, and this is the growth rate. Both of people, John's got it too. Both of the people who residents and homes, okay? That is from 1970, 10,000 to 2017, 345,000 homeowners associations. And they're in control. They're citizen controlled. The citizens have chosen to take this path. Okay. This is not the government mandated. So in other words, if you buy a home in a community association, be it whether it's gated or you have common areas and whatever, and you have fees that you have to pay on top of your taxes and your mortgage and whatever else, and they tell you this is mandated, you have to become a member of the association when you buy your house in this association property area, right? So bottom line, this is how it creeps. Somebody thought it was a good idea to start an association rather than just have community bylaws, and if for it to be, have a little bit of teeth somewhere. If somebody leaves a bunch of trash all over their property, they can send you a letter and tell you to clean it up. And if you don't clean it up, then they can clean it up for you and add it to your, assessment or whatever. Or add it to your taxes or put a lien on your property then. But the point of the matter is that this 1970 to 2017, that kind of a creep in that one thing, just that one area. And it's all over the place. It's car licenses and taxes and insurances and every other kind of thing. So the system itself is creeping in on everybody. And there has to be a magic moment. A couple weeks ago, I interviewed Jack McCaig from libertyaid.org on an interview. Brilliant guy who has figured out some methods to overcome the not just the creep, but the manacles, the debt manacles that are coming in on everybody, right? If we don't fight it, it will continue to creep. They're historically proven.
How many lawyers do you think the average middle class, and I'm using quotation marks right now, How many
Yeah.
how many attorneys do you think the typical middle class or aged middle class, homeowner has, estate owner? Probably a few. You got a tax attorney, you got a state attorney, you have, something else for something else, you got a lot of things. And they can find whatever you need, they got one for you.
Well, it's another one of those things that you have to actually educate yourself about. For example, anybody who thinks that it isn't hard work to stay free of the system is in a coma. Okay? It is constant work. You can never stop. You don't just get to say, I live in the land of the home of the free and the brave and the blah, blah. And that's what the military's for. And that's what the government's for. And that's why I pay my taxes. John is dancing. And so the bottom line is this. Every time you walk out that door, and now John's saying you don't even have to walk out the door to.
I was running.
Yeah,
I was showing you running.
Okay, I thought you were dancing.
You were running in America.
And so anybody thinks that you don't have to continuously be on guard and continuously work against the system creep, the mission creep, you're fooling yourself, because they're never going to decide to undo anything that they have already done. Okay, we'll take vaccines as a perfect example. People are coming out of the woodwork with tests and studies and anecdotes and stories over and over about children being damaged, adults being damaged, people dying, children dying from this overload of 70 plus vaccines children have to get these days before they're even 18 years old. Children get more vaccines before they're 6 months old now than they did back in this 80s. So back in the day, doctors used to experiment on people. They used to say, well, if your head hurts, maybe we should do some trepanning, whichever way you want to describe it. It's drilling a hole in your skull. That's what that was. They did that to people. There are carcasses of skulls of people with holes in their skull where they went in and took out part of the brain, or, let some blood out, or let some pressure out. I don't know what they thought they were doing, but somehow enough people died that they finally decided, you know what, this might not be a good idea. We might need to stop this. And so the same thing's happening with vaccines. You can tell people over and over again, have you looked at the insert to see what's in the vaccine? Well, no, I trust my doctor. Well, okay, that's cool. Let them experiment. If they ask you if you want to have a hole drilled in your head next, you're going to say, okay. Or you're going to maybe check around and see if that's a good idea or not. So this mission creep was the same thing happened with vaccines. When I was a child, we got a couple. We got an oral vaccine and we got a shot in the arm. That was it. That was the extent of my entire lifetime of vaccinations.
What was the shot in the arm? Was it for what was it for? Because I know there are people that have specific round marks on their arms still from the polio vaccine. I don't know. I don't know when they did that. So yeah.
An oral. I know I took an oral. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because
I'm old, so yeah. I was about maybe Sean. I was about 6 or 7, John, when the last time I got a vaccine.
Oh wow!
And I think that was oral. I think that was a little polio booster thing that you took. There was something before
My
that.
generation never had that. My generation never had that. The only thing I ever got was shots for strep throat, which
I had everything.
Was
I had
attracted
measles,
to me.
Yeah, I had measles, chicken pox, you name them. I had every childhood disease. I even was subjected to people that had mumps. My brother and sister got them. I never got it. I must have gotten it because I've never gotten it, but I must have gotten some kind of immunity. Just didn't have any symptoms.
I'm the same way with chicken pox, and my mom and my dad never had the chicken pox, and they put me in a room full of kids, and when I was young, never got them. So
That's what you're
yeah,
supposed. That's what you're supposed to
yeah.
do. The whole
So like you say,
concept.
I probably have them, but I have that immunity.
All right,
So
so let's
yeah,
go back to Lawrence's story about the lemons that grew the green or that turned blue with the mold. Okay, these viruses and bacteria are already everywhere, right? You don't choose to get it or not get it, and the whole
Oh,
purpose of that whole micro ecosystem is, as children, what do? We crawl around in the ground on the dirt. And what's the other thing we do? Every time we got a new object, where did it go? We stuck it in our mouth, right? Right in the mouth. The thumb, oh, here's a rattle, mouth. Oh, look here. Here's the thing, mouth. Do you know what that programming was for? Nobody told you, oh, put that in your mouth. That programming was already in that little baby's programming to put shit in their mouth and walk around and crawl in the dirt. Why? So that you could get those germs and you could build your own immune system with it. That's when you're designed to build your immune system.
that's funny. My dad always said, you've got to get all the experience you can. He's like, oh, don't worry about bugs or anything. The more, yeah, you gotta like, build up your tolerance for everything, which is
Sure.
kind of interesting.
I mean,
Yeah.
we played in the mud and made mud patties and crawled around in the barn and the chicken coop. And you can't imagine the level of germology I put myself through as a child. And
Free range children are the best.
free range,
Yeah.
total free range children. And you know what? I'm here to testify. I haven't seen a doctor.
I hear you.
15,
I know what you're
15 or-
about to say.
15 or
Yeah.
18 years at least. I can't remember when was the last time. And I've had broken bones and cuts that should be sutured according to them. And, been a few sicknesses here with something or other. And you know what I do? I fix it, whatever it is. Okay. I mean, I almost wrenched my finger backwards off in a direction that it doesn't go. Put a thing around it and carry on. And what else do? I pray.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
The
Thank
body
you,
is an
for healing
amazing.
me from this,
Yeah.
and then I put it out of my head and I don't worry about it anymore. And
Well, that might have something to do with it, the not worrying, because people that worry, that's like, sickness or disease that persists.
Yes.
It's that, yeah. So out of sight, out of mind, out of body.
Yeah.
You don't talk about it, it's not a problem. That's what my
well,
father said.
back in the
well,
biblical days, all that stuff were demons. All that stuff were spirits, and they cast them out. And that's, every disease was some kind of a spirit. That's the way they didn't know about microbes and germs and microorganisms, did they? They didn't have microscopes. They didn't know anything existed beyond the ability to see it. So in their mind, they just described all of it as spirits. Think about that. I mean, you don't even know what's attacking you.
and then what happened in
So,
Lawrence?
okay,
What happened in
now,
England?
Here's another thought. Oh, it's okay. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're just talking about bacteria.
Okay,
No,
so
sorry, delay.
yeah, there is a delay. I think my computer's hot for one thing. Anyway, so Lawrence, in your efforts to, and I know you spent months going through all these different Mandela effects, okay? It seems to be a topic that everybody finds curious because if you hit upon one that you really feel solid about, like a solid memory going on in there, is that one of the things that led you to the construct idea? And if you could describe how these things are being changed in real time. This has not been a reset unless they reset every night when you go to sleep and you just don't know it. I mean, there was a movie made like that, right? It was like Dark City or something. Okay. But how do you think it's happening? Because it can't just, it's material objects are being altered.
Yeah, oh, I think there's there's an office somewhere in a control center, maybe outside of Earth or more in Earth somewhere, and they're just deciding what they're going to change, and they're changing the code, and then it just happens. How else could it happen? Somebody somewhere is sat there changing the code, and the amount of things that are being changed, there's got to be more than one. And these people are absolute super incredibly smart, much smaller than us, is the stuff that they're changing, like the engines. I mean, I've actually got a model with the old styled engines now. I spent ages searching for it, found one, and I should get it in a couple of days. And it's I'll tell you what it is. I'll show you a
Okay,
picture.
so
Let me show you. It'll take a minute.
Well, I'm going to talk while you're doing that because you're looking for something. Okay.
There we go.
No, here we go.
It didn't take long. Story, but look, where are the engines on this A380? They are under the wings. Yeah. So but you can buy them.
Oh, if your arms were any longer, you could just hug yourself to death over this one, Lawrence.
Well, there you go. Anyway, I just thought I'd show
No,
you.
I love it. I this is your tenacity at work, and I have over the last 4 years I have come to learn that there's nobody more tenacious than you are when it comes to
you get it wrong,
provable research.
Do you remember Times New Roman, Lori?
Yes, I do. And you know what?
Times New Roman, it's not too. The Gleason map is real. It's not fake.
You will never live down Times New Roman, and it's okay. You know what? Because that's how research works. If you ascertain something and you make an assertion and you're proved wrong, okay, good. Now we know we're not going over there anymore. Now we'll go look someplace else. And I have no problem with that. You know what? I have people tell me I'm misinformed or wrong about stuff all the time. And every once in a while, they're right. But most of the time, it will be something simple like going down through the news feed on Facebook and seeing a picture of a bunch of people in a crowd in France. It's obvious because there's the, what is it? Arc de Triomphe in the background, and all the trees down the boulevard, and you go, okay, I know I got this in my head where we are here. And then you go, wah, 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 wah. Sorry, pal, but this was right after the soccer match. What's it called? The World Cup? This picture that you've put up here of all these protesters happening now actually happened after the World Cup. And I can do an image search and I can show you the million other pictures just like it that were all over the internet from that time. So it's not the protesters. So just give it up. There are protesters and it is happening, but that picture is not it. Okay.
Is it possible that the French protest a lot more than we know that they do?
Well, you know what? We know they're protesting. Those who cannot read French cannot read their signs. So you have to rely on somebody else to translate the signs for you. But all of the crap that they said at the beginning, that the news media said at the beginning that those protesters were out protesting about was false.
What about the latest explosion? That I saw a few people on the ground and they're saying, oh my God, there's cars turned over. Someone thought it was a car bomb, but then the media reports it as it was a gas leak and blah, blah, blah. So you
Well,
have this dichotomy of views. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's what happens. I can testify as having been one of the creators of our own local Occupy Wall Street group back in 2010. No sooner than those people hit the ground in New York City, me and a friend and I, started a Facebook page and created an event. Let's all meet out in front of Bank of America on Main Street in Sarasota and get as many people, let's put the word out, let's get as many people out there as possible, and let's start our own Occupy Wall Street right here, okay? And the very first group show up meeting was probably about 150 people. I have it on film. 150 people protesting what? All the same thing. The first day, everybody was there for one reason and one reason only. And everybody was yelling, banks got bailed out. We got sold out. Okay? That's what it was about, the bailout. Before you knew it, it was all about all these other things. And in New York, they, they started reporting people are, breaking windows and pooping on cars and blah, blah. Remember that? Okay. Nobody ever stops to realize that those are the instigators that are sent in to screw the pooch. Okay. The initial grassroots an unhomogenized version of what starts a protest, what starts a movement, only lasts a heartbeat. and then it gets taken over. So what's happening in France, okay, started out with a bunch of people protesting what? Does anybody know exactly what? Because what they said it was and what it really was are two radically different things. So, are a bunch of people, now let me make this other comparison. The first day of our local Sarasota Occupy Wall Street, 150 people, was a cross-section of Sarasota humanity. Every age, every socioeconomic footprint, men, women, young, old, hippies, guys in suits, the whole 9 yards, the gauntlet. Okay. What can make somebody bother enough to get up out of their chair and go out on the street with a bunch of strangers? You got to be
nothing left to lose.
You got to be pretty motivated to do that, right? Now, go 9 weeks. This may be into the 10th week in France. Okay. And these people are still in mass. Now, not as much during the weekday, but every weekend, there are tens of thousands of people out there. And we're not only getting a snapshot of this, that, and whatever areas, right? France is a big country. We have no idea how many groups there are, like our Sarasota Occupy Wall Street. We don't know how many groups have filtered out all over into towns and cities all over France. It's not just about Paris. So, bottom line is, for Americans or British or Canadians to get to the point that France has, someone's got to instigate it. And a whole bunch of people have to agree with that message, with that purpose.
It can happen, though. I was going back. What's this about? 15 years ago, I was taking my 2 daughters down to London to see a pantomime. Anyway, go get on the train, And in the UK, we've got first class trains, first class carriages, and standard. And if you travel in the first class, obviously, yeah, you have to pay more money. Anyway, so we're going down to London. All these first class, virtually empty, a handful of people. And every second class seat or standard class was full. There was nowhere to sit. So we ended up either standing up or sitting down in the space between the carriages, you know, where all the drafts are, you know, where the toilets, next to the toilets where people have their cases. That was all the way down to London. So anyway, on the way back, gets on the train again at the mainline London station. And it was the same old thing again. All the first class carriages were virtually empty, and the second class were ram-packed, and there was nowhere to sit down again. So I thought, well, I ain't having this. So I ended up causing a revolt. I took my kids down to the first class. I'd sit here. And then I went and gathered all the people between the carriages and told them that this just wasn't good enough. We've paid for a seat. You know, it's a health and safety risk to be stood between carriages, sitting on the bloody floor for 2 hours. And I got a lot of people, you know, so we got all these people in the first class. And then the guard came along with his machine. Well, sir, you're going to have to pay a $25 supplement to sit in this carriage. Says, no, I'm not, mate. I'm not paying. You know, I've paid for a ticket. You can't expect me and my two daughters to stand up or sit between two trains on the filthy floor, you know, for 2 hours. It's not going to happen. I said, it's not my fault if you can't put on enough carriages. You know, we're sitting here, we're not paid. And if you take any action, I said, in fact, so I've got my phone out. I had a mobile phone then. And I rang up the Sun newspaper, which was one of the biggest newspapers here. I got the Sun and said, I'm on this Virgin train traveling up from London, and I've staged a revolt. And we're all sat in the first class, and we're not paying. I've got a good story for you here if you want it. Anyway, in the end, the guard backed off. He says, oh no, I'm not going to get involved. You just, you know. Anyway, that was that. So we got away with that. We weren't paying.
Well, there you go, Lawrence. When you do stand up, they really don't know how to handle it. I mean, it initially causes a real problem inside. I mean, I went to an IRS small office one time, Internal Revenue Service, to make a payment and file a paper. And I'd already been through phone calls and everything else. And they said, you know, you have to come to the office and you have to make this payment in person and you have to bring this paper and you have to do it today. Okay. So I walk in, go up to the clerk at the desk and I say, here you go. I would like you to take this paper and stamp it. And here's my payment. No, I'm sorry. I can't. She literally went like that. I'm sorry. I can't do that. You have to wait in line. Why? It's a payment and a paper. I don't need any like IRS help. I don't need to talk to anybody. No, I'm sorry. I can't take that. So you'll have to go over there and sit down and wait. And I looked over to where a whole room full of people were all sitting around the wall waiting. And they all were like rolling their eyes like, yeah, that's the system. And I said, and it was one of those kind of crowds where like they weren't talking to each other. It was just everybody like they were at a doctor's office almost. And I said, how many of you people are here to actually see an IRS agent and talk? And like one or two people put their hand up. And I said, are all you other people here to make a payment? And they said, yes. And I said, why are you sitting here waiting? And they said, because that's what she told us to do. And right then, the woman behind the desk said, oh, I'm sorry. It's 12 o'clock. The office closes between 12 and 1. You have to come back at 1. You all have to leave and you have to come back at 1. And I said, I'm not leaving. And she said, well, the office closes. You have to leave. And I said, are you all leaving? They said, yeah, well, that's the way it goes. You have to leave and you have to come back. And then you have to take a number and start all over again. And I said, well, I'm sorry. but that's just not happening. Now I'm talking loud enough, like this loud in that room. And I went over to the door and I stood in front of the door like this. And I said, nobody leaves until somebody takes my payment. Nobody leaves
Good
until
for
someone
you.
takes
Good
my
for
payment.
you. Good for
And
them.
everybody's eyes were all bugged out, like, oh my God, this is almost like IRS terrorism here
You
going here.
created a shutdown.
And this back door of this hallway of doors opens up, and this guy comes out of the door and he walks down the hallway and he walks right up to me and he puts his hand out like that. And I put the paper in his hand and he went back down the hallway and I heard chunk and some kind of copy paper printy sound. And he came back up and he gave me the paper with the stamp that I had paid. And he looked at me as serious as a heart attack. And he said, you may go. I said, thank you so much. And I looked at the other people and I went, and that's how you do it. And I walked out the door and whatever happened to them, I don't care. But as I'm standing there with my arms over the door, I'm thinking, this is it. I'm going to get arrested. I'm going to go to jail.
Lori, that's amazing. Generally, the authorities don't like it when you address a group of people in a state office.
Of course not.
Like the last time I I addressed a group of people at the unemployment office. Oh, that's a bad idea. Sharing my comments. Yeah. Or on a train,
because
on a bus. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because we're in
airplane. Yeah.
We're in the cattle call at that point. We're in the sheeple fence. You're under their jurisdiction. The problem is if you don't accept them as having jurisdiction over you, there was absolutely no reason why that woman could not take my payment and stamp my paper. No questions need to be asked or answered. Nobody had to okay anything or see if I did it right or anything. Okay. Just accept the payment and stamp the paper.
Is it possible that we're adopting the queue method?
Yes.
The queuing method, like in Canada and England?
We sure are. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why the word sheeple got, invented and is used regularly, is because now that I know that the submatrix is not created by the decoder in the sky, okay? As a matter of fact, the submatrix system goes against everything originally designed about the system, goes against everything. It is completely and utterly backwards. So I do not comply. And it's the reason why I have fought a foreclosure in court for almost 9 years, is because you guys screwed this up. I did not. You put me in this position. I'm going to fight back until the bitter end because I got nothing to lose. I got nothing to lose. And so if people thought that way more, if they fought for their freedom, if they fought back when someone comes to their home and says, we're going to take your children because you didn't get your vaccinations, my God, I mean, the list is endless of the mission creep. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
You talk about the submatrix, and like a key to like getting past the submatrix. Your past interviewer, he brought up a very important fact: the idea of common law.
Right.
There are a lot of states that really take issue with common law. I mean, it's point of fact. It's probably best for most people to, be their own attorney if they have to, be in court, because first of all, you get shared all the information with you as the attorney and you don't have to sift it through, to yourself. You get all that from the other side. It's
well, I would agree with that, except for
what? Go ahead.
I would agree, except for criminal. I would never represent myself in a criminal situation. But what everybody forgets is whether or not you hire an attorney to be your mouthpiece within the Admiralty Law Court, which is what you're going through in our land and in UK. You're in the Admiralty Court. You're not in a common law court. You have to understand. It takes years to understand the law, the language of law, be that common law or Admiralty law. The legalese can screw you over so fast if you don't understand what you're doing that you can, these people who come in, I'm the sovereign man of the land, free man on the land, and I am the live living people and man, and you know, I am not the person straw man that you guys have put me down as, blah, blah. The whole straw man idea is the submatrix. Okay. That's the you in the submatrix. The only way to get out of the submatrix is to withdraw from it completely. But if you get sucked into it, you have to fight it inside the submatrix. And so you have to hire their mouthpieces. But one thing you can never forget, it is your case, not their case. It is you. They are representing you. Okay. So you have to have hands on your case. You can't just say, whatever you think, whatever advice you have, you know, what do you think I should do next? Without asking, well, what are the consequences of that? What are the ramifications of that? What does that really mean? What are the long-term consequences of that? Can they come back on me later? And on and on and on. I mean, it is quicksand. Okay. And in my foreclosure case, I've already had the first plaintiff dismiss their own case against me and go away and pay my attorney's fees, and then come back and file against me again using a different entity now this time, and a different lawyer and a different, debt collector group. Okay. And even if I win this one, I mean, not just have it dismissed, win it. That doesn't prevent them from coming again. This can go on in perpetuity. So why do you think I'm interested in talking to people like Jack McCaig, who has come up with alternative ideas about how to balance the system? They got their trust. You make your trust. Now the trusts are banging heads. That's not you, and that's not me. That's this entity you created, because they created one. Well, I could play. I'll create one too. And so that's how the game is evolving. But if in 2008 and 9 and 10, all the people everywhere who were under these foreclosures, if they all would have gotten together and put their yellow vests on and said, what do you think, we actually are trying to get a free house here? You frauded us. If there was such a thing as free houses, then there wouldn't be any homeless people, right? And so we're not talking about getting a free house. So quit talking that language. Quit using that. That's not what's happening here. And you can go and sit in it. I invite anyone to go and sit in on a foreclosure case in your local courthouse anywhere. There's one happening every day, if not 20, if not 50, every day, bang, 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 all day long through court. There's a reason why they call it a rocket docket. Okay. So you go sit through and you watch what the goings on are in these foreclosure courts, and you would go, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this many people are losing their homes. I can't believe this many people are not even showing up to fight. I can't believe that they're having hearings about someone's most valuable asset that don't last for more than 5 or 10 minutes. Boom. That's all the time you have? I'm sorry. Bang, bang. I rule for the plaintiff. So you understand not only why I'm fighting, but what an education this has been about their system, about the game.
You go to the county tax assessor office of any county you live in America, and you'll see a whiteboard with a whole bunch of names and or addresses of people that are delinquent. And oh my God, it's just a schedule. It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And this goes on, like you say, every day, every week, every month, every year. And I don't know what it's like in Florida, but they list them in the paper here. They list people that have problems that are, going to get foreclosed on.
John, do you know that it is public information? Anyone who is considered a debtor, they use that word. You're the debtor. Okay. And it doesn't matter if I just watched a video of a guy who was used Jack McCaig's process. He got a $2,000 or $3,000 bill from Verizon. He asked them to verify or to validate the debt. They turned it over to a collection agency. The collection agency is now trying to get it. Verizon's trying to get it. He's sending letters back and forth, validate the debt. They don't ever validate the debt. So what does he do? He filed a small claims against him. And he won the small claim. They were forced to go into, arbitration or whatever. And they paid him $1,000 to go away. And that's how flipped this thing went. They say he owes them several $1,000s, and by using this system, by the time it's said and done, they paid him $1,000 to go away and no debt left.
Well, that's amazing because, from what I've learned in my few years on this planet is that if you owe like a couple $1,000s, maybe like $1,000 or $2,000 short of 10 grand in America, you can walk away from that debt pretty easily because it's typically not worth the attorney's fees or the arbitration. Oh, it's not. See, these are words that I didn't learn. I just heard this from an associate at Chase Bank. So, buffering.
Boy, this sucks. I didn't get any of that. It was all buffering.
Oh,
this sucks.
Well.
Am I buffering? Am I buffering?
Not now, but I think there might be a delay.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's stopped now. It's not stopped buffering. Anyway, you want to watch this? I watched this while you were doing that program.
No, we cannot watch that because we're not getting copyright crap on the video.
You can't watch it now. It's a long program. I'm just telling you, this is about exactly what you're talking about. It's called The Great British Mortgage Swindle.
Hold it still, Lawrence. It's all over the can. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on.
You could show a trailer. You could show a trailer. That's public, right?
The Great
British Mortgage Swindle. Okay.
Sounds like the great rock and roll swindle about the Sex Pistols.
Well, it shows you, it's about this thing anyway. They took on the corrupt legal system and actually won in the end. But it was against all the odds because the judges are all fucking corrupt and
they're all in the bank's pocket.
They ignore the law. Yeah, they just ignore the law.
And so that's what I mean, Lawrence. If you are pro se, which means representing yourself, if you walk into a courtroom, especially a foreclosure courtroom, pro se, you might as well go ahead and walk up to the podium, get your knife out, and just slit your throat in front of everybody right there and be done with it. Because you're going to get laughed right out of the room. they will blow you over like nothing. Now, the only way that it works is if you, the group of people that I've been following, they court watch. When somebody has a case or a trial or a hearing, the whole bunch of them comes in and sits in the courtroom in the back of the room, like, because, you know, we'll have you on record. It, in the big scheme of things, it rarely even matters. Most of the people, they don't even try to fight, because they feel like, you know, if you think about how many people in the US in the early 2000s bought homes, got mortgages were handed out left and right. If you could even fog a mirror, you got a mortgage. They didn't care how much you put down. They would give you these, you know, they would, oh, well, that's no problem. If you only got 5% to put down, we'll just add a point or two to your principal and interest, blah, blah. And most people, I mean, I can sit here right now and remember, I can play it back in my head. George Bush, after 9/11, 2001, started talking about, to get America going again, people need to go and live their lives, buy homes, buy stuff, you know, travel, spend money.
He gave
Go
us
shopping.
that $500 too. Didn't he?
So,
He gave us that. He gave every American $500.
Gave everybody $500, or
Woo!
400.
400, whatever.
or
Whatever.
Yeah. Okay, so the big push was to be a homeowner, you know, and like I said, they were passing out loans like Pez candy. If you could fog a mirror, you got a loan. You didn't even have to have a job. I know people who got bought $130,000, $140,000, $160,000 condos that didn't even have jobs.
It
Here.
was called stated income.
Stated
People were allowed
income.
to
Yeah,
have
whatever.
Income. That's what it was in New York State.
Of
You
course,
could just like
of
have it
course.
listed and like, oh sure, there you go.
And-
There you go, mortgage.
And by 2007, what happened?
Crashing.
Oh my
Can't
God, we have too
pay.
many derivatives out there. We've sold too many derivatives. We've sold too many
Question.
mortgage-backed securities. We're in trouble.
Speaking about
The whole thing is mission creep. What did they want? They wanted people's property.
Okay. So question, in line with the latest shutdown, which is what, going to be like 23, 24 days as of tomorrow?
John.
Yes. I can hear you. Can't
John,
see
could you turn your camera off? Because I think that might be what's doing it.
Okay.
Turn your camera off for a second and then talk. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say the government shutdown we have is going into 23, 24 days now, tomorrow, and they haven't received their paycheck as of Friday. That's like a yellow vest situation ready to happen. And talking about people not being able to pay their mortgages, pay their car bills, pay their student bills, pay their kids, school clothes money. I mean, it's ridiculous. So, engineered, perhaps, by what entity? Well, I don't know. That's tough to say.
Well, I would agree with you to the degree that there's all these, I mean, the United States government has something like 800 and something thousand employees. Not all of them are, going without paychecks, but if you live paycheck to paycheck, with which most Americans do now, most Americans, if you ask them the truth, they wouldn't have $1,000 in cash available, liquid, to deal with an emergency. And most people's mortgage payment, car payment, and food alone, just those three things, take up most of their monthly paycheck. So I don't know. We'll see how long they'll go without their paycheck. We'll also see how long they go keeping it shut down, because they can play emergency games. This is the longest shutdown ever so far. And also, are they in cahoots with the bank, with the banks? The big major banks? Are they telling them, like, for example, when Hurricane Harvey and the H and I, the next one was Isabel, whatever it was.
Hurricane Sandy.
No, I'm
It
talking
happened
about
after Sandy Hook.
right. No, I'm talking about last year. Harvey hit Texas, and then the one that hit Florida, real bad, pretty bad. They got the banks to agree to have a moratorium on foreclosures for 6 months. No new foreclosures could be filed until these people were able to, get back on their feet after this devastating hurricanes and floods and whatever. And the minute that moratorium was over, what do you think happened? Kaboom! All these foreclosures got filed. But you don't hear about this in the news ever. Okay. So here's all these people out there quietly suffering their own personal financial dilemma and have no one to talk to, no place to go for help. They're a heartbeat away of going on the street. The bank calls them up and says, or sends them a letter. Oh, we'll offer you cash for keys if you'll just sign over the deed to your home. Well, how much is that cash for keys? Oh, it's $3,000. Well, and then what happens? Well, we give you $3,000 and you move out and you leave the house. You don't strip it out or do anything stupid to it. And we'll, that'll help with your moving expenses. Well, where I live, there isn't a place in town worthy of calling home that you could rent for less than $1,400, $1,500, $1,800's average, $2,000's average a month. Okay. Before any other bills. How far is $3,000 going to go? But you're going to give over the keys to your house rather than go try and fight. So if everybody would have done that at the beginning in 2008, 9, and 10, because that's when the majority of, I got filed on February 2010. That's when the majority of these things started going down. We probably could have had a different outcome, but we'll never know that because nobody fought. They just rolled over, and they filed bankruptcy, or they went homeless, or they combined families to live in a house. All kinds of things you never thought would happen in the home of the free and the American dream and the whole 9 yards. So we deserve everything we've gotten because by shutting up, it's consent. By allowing the mission creep, it's consent. And I've been online in one form or another blabbing about this stuff now for 10 years. And I'll keep doing it. Used to be on Blog Talk Radio. So, okay, it's time to wrap up. What are you guys going to work on, or what are you thinking about, or whatever for the next week or so before we come back together?
Well, I'm doing my blockbuster talk, Lori. I'm still putting it together, and I'm going to be interacting with the audience and trying to get them to see the complete logic, because I'm an Aquarian, and everything is about logic, and I will be showing them the logic that this is, as you call it, a supernatural construct.
Well, plug your thing you're doing. You're doing it talk where, when, and what time? Because we got listeners in UK that could come to it.
It's on the 28th of January. Is that Monday? 28th of Jan.
Way to go on the marketing there, Lawrence.
28th of Jan. Well, I'm not bothered whether they turn up or not. I've already put it on
Well,
my
yes,
Facebook
yes,
anyway.
you do. Yes, you are. You would like to have a crowd there. Okay,
Oh,
so it's January 20 what?
We get about 50 people, 60 people in there anyway, normally. It's at the end of the month, but it's 28th, I think. 19th, 26th is when it's.
And where's the venue?
28th of Jan. It's at New Horizons in Lytham St Anne's.
Okay.
So I'm going there. I shall be talking to the audience and having fun and showing them things, you know. And,
Are you going to be ready for somebody who went there when you did your flat Earth talk and say, "Oh, now it's not flat anymore. Now it's a construct"? Or what? How are you going to go? How are you going to answer that?
Oh, it is it's a flat Earth construct, isn't it? Of sorts.
Yeah.
Everything's, you know.
It presents as flat.
Nothing is.
That's the answer. It presents as flat. It doesn't present as a globe.
It's you know, and the thing is, once you know, it puts a whole different perspective on everything because you know, it's like you're in your own little bubble. You know, this is all a construct, a very good construct of that, but it is still a construct, and we'll just go and you know.
Well,
a glass of Remy Martin brandy if you're feeling a little stressed.
On January 16th, next Wednesday, I'm having a private phone interview for an article that a guy is writing. Paul Mulholland contacted me and asked me to do an interview with him. And I said, well, he said he's listened to the podcast and followed something to do with we are doing whatever. And I said, am I the only one you're interviewing? And he said, no. He said, I said, well, how long is it going to last? And he said, well, probably an hour, maybe hour and a half tops. The longest other interview I've done was with Mark Sargent on the same topic. And I said, well, you couldn't have found anybody more opposite to interview for about this topic than really? Me and Mark Sargent. So
Mark Sargent one's out there. Who was it then?
It's not. He hasn't written it yet.
Oh, right.
He's just interviewing different people about the flat Earth community. Is what he really wants to ask me about. That's all I know about it right now. So as soon as he gets that done and puts it out there somewhere, I'll.
It's just so. Have you seen those big interviews that they've done that came out about last October? And there are all these new faces coming. You know, Flat Earth Andrew, whoever the hell that is. I was watching through that one. I thought, oh yeah, great. He's got the Peter Pie Earth and the ice wall, and I'm thinking, oh, there's no 24-hour sun in the Antarctic. It doesn't matter what.
Because dome. Dome. That's why.
Thinking,
but dome though. But the dome though. Okay. All right, John. So what are you working on? What are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about having another date in another 2 weeks.
You had a new date tonight. So was this a first date?
Meetup, first date.
Okay,
so, yeah.
Good. And it went well?
Yeah, it was fun. I don't want to say much, but really what I'm working on is my IP, my intellectual property. And all I can say is just... is it possible for anyone out there to imagine a world without an optical lens camera?
I lost John completely.
Okay, that's fine. Am I still there?
You're still there, John, yeah. It's still there.
Oh, did you hear me, Lawrence?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't quite twig it, but I'm sure a little later.
Damn it.
That's fine.
Not a thing. It was all. You're going to have to turn off your camera if you're going to talk.
Really? Okay.
Now Lawrence
Yeah,
is
no,
talking and he's buffering. The whole thing's screwed up.
well, I
Never
turned off my camera, and really, I'm just working on my intellectual property, and
Okay,
that's what
now
I want
you're
to get off
good.
the
All
ground.
right.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So if you
Awesome.
can just imagine a world without cameras, without an optical lens camera.
I can't imagine a world without an optical lens camera.
Okay.
All
There are
right.
there's a handful of ways to do it, and I can think of 4 ways that actually still use an optical lens. So that's all I'm going to say.
Okay, cool. I love secrets. I love being in on the secret when it finally comes out. So, all right. That's it. We got to go. We've
Right.
been on here for like 3 hours or something horrific again. So, for those of you listening to the podcast, I have no way of knowing right now whether this thing is buffering all over the place. And I apologize for all the chatter about buffering. When you have people in 3 different parts of the country and you're all on your own equipment, it's the best we can do. So the audio hopefully will be good for this. Thank you always for downloading and listening. And those of you watching on YouTube, thank you as well. And if anybody has any ideas about the same thing I've been talking about, how to prove the construct, please send me an email at info@flatearthconspiracy.com, or put a comment on the channel on the YouTube.
If you know how to manipulate the construct, that's what we want to know.
Yeah, if you know how to do that, that would be righteous. If that information, if we got a construct manipulator whistleblower out there somewhere who wants to get with us and run some tests and share their information, we'll do that in a heartbeat. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you soon. And thanks, Lawrence. And thanks, John. Good night, everybody.